Hello everyone, welcome back to the Plunder Den. In this week's episode, we're going to base and paint some knights. So I kind of wanted to do this episode as an extension of my Blood&Crowns series. I really wanted to try out some huge miniatures products that I got. Some basing materials and some of their paints. So I reached out to them actually and sent them an email and, just said I wanted to sample some of their products and try them out on the channel here. I got an email back from Brenton, who is their founder, and he actually sent me a little gift package here of different items to try, which was super, super awesome of them. I figured this would be a perfect project to work on. I kind of did mention that I wanted to do, he kind of asked what kind of projects are you working on, and I mentioned that I was going to be doing some knights and, some medieval stuff for Blood&Crowns. So he kind of sent me appropriate stuff in here, some metallic paints and some basing materials for miniatures. And I figured the cavalry or the knights would be perfect for it because they have a larger base and you can really try out these different products. So I'm going to show you the different things that he sent me. He sent me these lovely tufts, overgrown grasses. It's called the Fertile Overgrown. They're really cool. He sent me that. And he sent me this product, dirt. It's kind of like a texture paste, which is really, really cool. And then this woodland basing material. It's kind of cool. It's got little branches in it and everything. Really, really neat product. Woodland. And then a series of paints. So he sent me the color silver here. And then we got a black wash. And I really like this color. It's just iron. So actually the combination of the iron and the silver makes a really good looking armor colors. And we're going to explore that on this in this episode. And he also sent me this really cool, it's like a palette tool for putting your texture on your miniatures and stuff like that. So I might be able to retire that plastic one. I'll probably still use it for drywall. But I'll use this for more textures and muds and stuff like that. But this is really cool. Sent me this a little cool tool to try out too. So I actually use all those products on this episode to paint the knights. So let's take a look at these knights. Let's look at the finished product here. So these are the ones all painted up. Now, of course, there's some other colors in here, and they're not all huge miniature stuff. But just I used all the products that he sent me to finish these knights, and they came out really, really good. I'm really happy with them. Really love the basing materials, and the metallics are awesome. Like the combination of those two. Let me pull out one of these guys here and make them get a little bit closer. I really like the metallics. You probably can't even see that there. Well, when we get down to the table, you'll see me paint them. But anyways, they came out really fantastic. So that's what we're going to do on today's episode. Before we get down to the table, though, I just want to mention again, I'll put a link to Huge Miniatures down below, their website and, their hugeminiatures.com, www.hugeminiatures.com. But I'll put a link to their YouTube channel, which has all the links to all their different pages and stuff, so you can take a look at it and do some shopping of their products yourself. So they have amazing products. I actually learned about them first at Adepticon, actually, and so definitely going to be using a lot more of their products in the future. All right, so the other thing I want to talk about, I mentioned in the last episode that I had kind of a terrain flash challenge to win this train. So if you remember, I did the armored train project. I managed to snag one of these Home Depot trains before Christmas ended, that's the only time really those things come out, and they have different ones every year. So I'm going to give that one away as a prize to the winner of the Flash Challenge. So the Flash Challenge is, I need you to go back to a previous episode, which called Simple Trenches. So I think it's kind of appropriate for World War I to build trenches to go along with your armored train. So all you need to do is you can build any one of those three that I built on that episode, and post your pictures on either my Facebook page, The Plunder Den, or my Instagram page. Just connect my name to it, and I'll see it on there. Those are places you can put it, your completed projects. I figure we'll go to the beginning, maybe the first week of February. So let's go February 6th. Arbitrarily, I'm going to pick that date. That'll give a little bit more time. I have another Flash Challenge project coming up for the paint competition that Blood&Pigment's putting on. So keep an eye for that. An upcoming episode. I'm going to do build another terrain project, a real simple one on the channel here. And you guys can win some prizes there as well. So just a reminder about the Blood&Pigment paint-off. That starts actually today, January 1st. So take a look at the Blood&Pigment page. I'll also put a link to them down below. And they have all the details about the great paint-off on there and how you can win outstanding prizes on there from all sorts of different sources. All right, so that's pretty much it. I know that was a lot, but I wanted to cover a lot of things today in today's episode, the first episode of 2024. All right, let's get down to the table and let's start painting and let's start basing. Okay, so I figured to take a closer look at some of those items I got. There's that little palette knife there. Those are those tufts that we were looking at. And we got our dirt paste, which is really cool. And then we have our Woodlands. It's a 4-in-1 mixture for basing miniatures. See, there's little bits of wood in there I was talking about. And here's our black wash. This is iron colored paint and silver. So those are the ones they sent me, which I'm going to use to paint up the armor on these knights. So just a reminder, these are the Perry miniature knights that I got for Blood&Crowns. And we're going to assemble 6 of these. I think I'm going to do half. I'm going to do my British ones, English. But I'm going to kind of make them somewhat generic. I kind of took the instructions out, looked at some of the poses. Similar to when I did the archers and the crossbowmen. I just kind of looked at some of the different poses for some ideas. And you know, they got some color schemes in here. I'm going to try not to put too many of the logos and details on the chest, mainly because I'm only going to build a dozen probably for this entire game. 6 for probably French, 6 for the English. But if I don't put as many markings on it, then it'll just be kind of generic. And so I can beef up either force. And you can see those are the bases that came along with it. I'm going to use my little snippers here that I use. That's my Tester's non-toxic glue and my hobby knife and some sandpaper. That's what I use to trim up these sprues here. There's 2 types of sprues in this box. I got one here with pretty well the riders are on the one and the horses are on the other. There's a few horse pieces on the other sprue. If you wanted to make them a little more armored, there's some chainmail and stuff on there, which I do on kind of the commander, I would say, of the force here I'm building. So I started off by just building the horses first. I just figured I'd just build all these out and then glue them to these bases. And I just show you, this is that chainmail that was in the other sprue there that I'm going to add to this horse. So I really do like using that Tester's glue. It's non-toxic. It dries fast. You can use it anywhere in the house. You don't have to go to the garage and use it in a well-ventilated area. It's fantastic. So looking at these sprues, these Perry miniatures are actually pretty good. They have a wide range of weaponry on here. So I was thinking of making a couple of lancers, a couple of guys with a sword. I decided to make this commander guy here. This is going to be my commander of the unit here. Kind of gave him a little more armor on his horse. And he's got a full bodysuit of armor. The other ones are going to have different variations of armor on there. And I'm just showing you I'm going to glue the rest of them together. So I didn't spend a whole lot of time on picking poses and showing you guys. I just wanted to show you that how I assemble them, kind of. And this guy's going to have the flag on it, I think. And that's probably the only interchangeable guy I'm going to have for both, forces, is have one that has a flag that I can interchange in and out to match whatever force they're in. I'm not going to build too many cavalry, but in this episode we're going to build 6. So just to change it up a little bit, I did a couple with these lances. There's a couple guys holding swords, another guy holding kind of a hammer or mace, and just kind of go from there. The next thing is to put the drywall compound, like I've shown in the previous episode that I did on those archers and crossbowmen. And I just put that on there. I spared you going through showing you how I applied. I already did in that previous episode. But just showing you that I like to add that on there. It just kind of hides the base, essentially. And makes it look like one complete piece. And it gives it a nice little texture to it. It looks like kind of mud or whatever, right? And then I use a little bit of sandpaper, just sand the edges up, anything that's rough on there. So when I'm happy with the way the drywall compound dried and looks, then I go to the black folk art craft paint, and we're going to do that to seal in this drywall compound and make it rock hard. So once that dries, it's not going anywhere. And it's a good basing material for any of your miniatures, really. So this is after I've completed that, and you can see that I've got them all black primed on the bottom there. And we're ready to go to add other things to it. And I've completed all the miniatures the same way there with that black craft paint. So now we're going to do, this is for Dan out there. I'm going to do a brush-on primer. I like to use brush-on primers. Again, you can do this anywhere. I don't have to go outside, a well-ventilated area. I don't have to worry about the wind. Just take my brush out and paint it on there. Now, if you do a nice clean coat on there on the brush, it dries perfectly smooth on there, and I really do like brush-on primers way better than rattle cans. All right, so now we're going to add in, this is real brown. It's, if you're familiar with my channel, these are the basing colors that I use. I'm going to stick to craft paints right now. Because I like the add more strengths. The more layers you add on, the more strengths you're going to add to the base of it. Craft paint just hardens and seals it in, especially this folk art craft paint. It's multi-purpose, multi-surface. Really, really good paints. And I really like the, more so than other craft paints. I don't know, some people say they're all the same. I don't think that's true. I think folk art is a little bit better than the other craft paints out there. And it's a mid-range expense when you look at all the different craft paints out there. All right, so now we're going to move to bark brown and put that on there as well. And I just kind of briefly show you. You can see I sped up the camera. Just kind of briefly showing you what I'm doing. That's like a little flat square brush. That's what I like to use when I'm doing bases. So I'm just going to put a little bit of color on there and fill those in. But I wanted to show you a little bit of this, just so you can see how I did it. I've shown this in the previous video with the crossbow and archermen. And really that video, it was an unboxing of the Perry miniatures. But I also did a paint tutorial attached to that. So if you want to refer back to how I put the drywall compound and stuff like that on, it's in that video. So next up is the Pablo. I like to add a little bit of brightness to it. I really love the way this looks. It gives it a real good muddy feel to it. These combination of colors on the base. And, frankly, I cover most of it with, the foliage we're going to add to it. Also, the new products I got, that dirt texture, we're going to add to this and try that out for the first time on these bases as well. So that's going to add a little extra, more details. But everywhere the grass isn't showing, you should have some pretty cool looking textured mud on there. I think it just really adds a little more realism to it. But before we get to that texture, I'm going to add some black paint. And really I'm going to hit some of the areas where the metallics are. And I showed this in a previous video. I like to add an undercoat of black on there. I didn't want to just paint the entire miniature black. I like to still do the grays all over the miniatures first. But then add this black on the metallics. Just puts a deep color underneath. Now, you could go two ways you could approach this. You could do it this way that I'm doing with the black and then add the two metallics on top. Or you could put the 2 tones of metallic and then add a wash over it, or add the one darker color, then add wash, and then add the light silver on it. So there's different variants that you could do that on. I prefer to just put the black down first and put the metallics over top of it. And if I have to add some washes later, I can. So these are some speed paints I'm going to use to paint the horses with. So we got Gravelord Gray, Hardened Leather, Sand Golem, Dark Wood. Just some different colored horses here. The Gravelord Gray is almost like a black, but it's just a little bit of grayness. So you got a little bit of the gray underneath showing. But I'm planning on putting some white hairs and some spots on those horses and add some details afterwards. Yeah, I feel speed paints are a good way to paint horses. Really just a large area, and these new Army Painter ones are really good, and they actually sit in the horse really well. So I'm just kind of showing you this Gravelord Gray here. I'm just putting on this one particular horse here. We're going to kind of follow this one knight here, as I've done in previous videos when I'm doing painting tutorials, opposed to showing you all the different miniatures in each one. That would just eat up too much time. So we're just going to kind of focus on one, and then I'll keep painting the other ones as we go along, so they still stay up to the rest of it. So now we're going to move into this Iron by Huge Miniatures, Iron color. And I already did this guy in advance, and you can see that metallic. It's really of a dark metallic, which is fantastic, because then you can use that as a dark undertone over top of that black I already have. So I'm going to do this other, again, the knight we were following. So you can see I'm just adding that iron on top of the black. So you got a nice little dark metallic color. And then we're going to highlight it with that silver that we got from Huge Miniatures too. So that'll really give us a really good metallic color for these knights. These particular paints actually have quite a bit of pigment in them, so you don't have to use very much. They're actually really good paints. More so, the Army Painter is a little thinner. You have to. I know the new ones probably are. I know they've rectified that a little bit, but these ones actually have a lot of color to them. So I didn't have to do too much. There's let's just say not very many coats, and it came out really good. But you can see I'm kind of using a dry brushing technique. It's the same flat brush that I'm using that I use for the bases. I just like to use that flat brush and put it on there. And I kind of gave myself a little bit of a two-tone metallic by leaving some of them gray and some of them black underneath. But I'm going to cover it all with that same iron. So then you get kind of a two-tone metal going on there. You got lighter sections and darker sections. So then we're going to move to the silver. And this is kind of just to highlight that all. So let's take a look at this guy here. I've already done him in advance. You can see that I really like the way that came out. When you add that over top of the dark metallics, you get a really good, I would say, convincing metallic for your knights. I don't like when it's so shiny, even though I've seen suits of armors, but I think they're more of a ornamental than they actually are what they would have worn. But I liked. It's still shiny. Don't get me wrong. Like, this is still shiny, but it's got a more deep richness to it. That's just me taking more personal liberties with things. But I really like the way these combination of colors, the black undertone, the iron, and then the silver over top, gives it a really good look to it. So I just wanted to show you kind of how I apply the paint on. So again, I'm using that flat brush. It's a smaller flat brush. I like to use it also, that kind of brush, for painting ships too, because it paints a nice straight line. You can also get that same style brush with a kind of a cut notched on the end of it, which is kind of cool too. You can even paint straight lines with that too as well. But yeah, those are it's good just for doing small objects like this, if you kind of just do a small brush on over top. You could use a small dry brush. They have really small ones out there, and you could do it that way too if you wanted to. But I find this is good enough. Just keep using that same brush. So we're going to go with a little bit longer here. I just wanted to show you the way it looks when I apply the paint. I hit that sword too. Kind of lighten up that sword more with that silver. More so than probably the rest of the armor. More solid. And you can see that front plate on the front of the horse. I made it a little bit brighter as well. But just kind of keep working it around. Keep working it around. I don't want to go too heavy. It's a lot easier to just keep adding layers and layers, or just lightly brushing on that silver over top of the nice deep metallics we already have there down on there. And I'm just showing you I'm going to hit them all and do the same thing. So right now we're going to move into Dragon Red. This is an army painter color, and I just figured I'm going to add a few red details, maybe on the saddle that he's sitting in, and implies that it's English. I noticed a lot of them, they had little patterns that are on top of the chest plates. So they have a red chest plate like this, but they have different symbols on it depending on what lord it's from. And there's quite a variety, actually. And, you know, for the most part, I'm going to make these pretty generic. Just some bread, some areas. There's one of them I decided to go with yellow and purple stripes on their uniform. It's more of a cloth uniform than it is armor. Just to add some variance again, I can add these to each other. So let's say, you know, playing with another person that has their own miniatures, I can kind of just add these into each other if I want to play all French or all English. There's no real identifying markers, except for this gentleman right here. He's going to have a flag on there, which will indicate what lord he serves, and that'll kind of be the person I add in. I'll do another one for the French as well. So I'm just showing you leather brown and skeleton bone. I'm going to kind of do their lances and all their belts and straps and everything that's on the horse. Probably the sheaths for their daggers and the sheaths for their swords. So all over the place. I even add some of that leather brown to a little bit of the fur or the hair on some of the horses. Just kind of all over the place, really. I'm just showing you that lance. And I'm going to put a couple speed paints and washes over top of that. All right, so now we'll move to Greedy Gold. Just add some gold details. A lot of these armors have like a metallic, but then they also have the gold. And plus, I want to put it on the sword. It's on the dagger, and you know, some of the details on the horses and some of the details on their suit of armor. Just adds a nice little contrast to have a little bit of gold on there too. And you can see I'm going to put some detailed golds on this chest plate. Like I said, this is kind of the lord or the commander of this unit of cavalry, so I'm going to give him a little more details than some of the other ones possibly. But they're all going to get a little of a gold treatment. I'm going to hit all of them, especially around the horse as well. Some of the saddlebag, and of course their weapons. So I'm just showing you there. I'm going to hit all those. So then we got the black wash. Now, I didn't feel that I needed to use too much wash on this one, but I did use this black wash as a here to darken. So I got kind of that one's like a hardened leather kind of color, and I wanted to add some dark areas. I don't know if you look at certain kind of horses like that, they have areas, maybe because where the hairs are closer together, they're kind of darker, and they have some darker areas. And I kind of applied it to the Grave Lord Grey horses as well. I did 2 horses in that color. And I actually really just used that more on the horses than anything else. I did hit some of the armor, especially on the chainmail, with that black. And then, of course, I'm going to highlight it again with a little bit of silver. But with that black undertone I already had, I didn't need to. But I did like using that black wash on the horses. So this is where we're really going to hit all the final details on here. We got fur brown, We got a bunch of different yellows here, and really I'm going to add those yellows to the hairs on some of the horses. And the orange and the red is just going to be, that's pure red and lava orange. They're just going to highlight some of the colors on here. So we're going to start with this pure red. Somebody had mentioned that they wanted me to do a few more, spend a little more time highlighting. So really this is how I do it. It's kind of similar to my buildings. I just start to the center where it would be the brightest, and just kind of work the paint out to the edges. And then, you don't work it right out to the edges, otherwise it just becomes a solid red again. But if you just highlight it more in the center and just kind of pull it a little bit to the left and the right, then you get kind of like a shadowing, and that's really kind of how I highlight it. I do that similar with my English coats and stuff like that on my British regulars and all that kind of stuff. That's the same technique. I just kind of we're the brightest in the center and then kind of work our way out. So now I'm going to take this basilic brown. I had already put down a desert yellow. And you can see it's kind of more of a dull color. And I did add a little bit of that black wash to it, so you can see it's kind of a little dark. And that's going to give me my dark undertone. And then I'm going to come back with that basilic brown, which is a brighter yellow, even though it says it's a brown. But then I'm going to highlight all the yellow areas in there. And you can see he's got some stripes on there. I'm going to hit it with brighter purple. And then highlight these horses. Again, I started with the desert yellow, and then I moved to this basilic brown. And you can see it just highlights it nice. And I go all the way up to the dynamic yellow there, and just go really just brighter yellows, and just work our way up to kind of highlight some of the hairs and the horse. So now we're going to use that texture paste. And we're going to use that little palette knife, and we're going to apply this onto these bases. So I pretty well have all the miniatures all painted up. Now, I didn't go over and show you all the leather details. That lava orange I used to make worn leather. I've shown that in other videos on the miniatures. But I'm pretty happy with all the brightness. And you can see I've added a lot of details to the horses. Really just colored their hairs and added some spots in the gray ones. I just kind of wanted to show you them all before I applied that dirt. So they're all painted up and ready to roll. So then this is what it looks like when you open it up. So it actually has got like granules in it. It's not really smooth. It has some granules in it, and it sticks really nicely. It's actually really easy to spread out. The bottle recommends on there to let it dry for an hour, which I did. I followed the instructions, but I noticed that it dried fairly fast. And maybe about a half an hour, it was really solid already. But you know what, we should probably stick to what the bottle says, or the container. It's not a bottle, container, and stick to the hour there. But once I was dry, I was confident that I can add the other stuff onto it. So this is after it's dried already. It's hard to see on this camera, but it really adds a little more texture to that dirt and soil that I have on the base. So this is what that woodland looked like. It's 4-in-1 basing materials for. It's essentially a flocking, but it's because it's a 4-in-1. You could just put glue on this base, and you could just dunk it into that material, and you would be fully based. But I like to kind of strategically place it a little bit because I want to have some of the mud showing still. It looks like kind of the horses are running through the center of it. So it looks like there's, it's not just a full-on grass on the bottom. So usually I put my white tacky glue down. I always do it over top of a newspaper. That way, whatever spills out and falls down, I can just pick it up and pour it back in the container so I don't waste any. So I just kind of do it over top of a newspaper. So you can see I just grab it with my finger. I know there's all sorts of applicators and stuff you can get, and I'm not making standing up static grass. You just dump it on there. It looks fine. It looks like what it needs to. Plus, we're going to add some tufts on top of that, right? We're going to use some of that other overgrown grass there that we're going to add to it as well. So I'm just showing you how I apply that on there. All right, so now that's we got all our. You can see there's some mud showing in all the miniatures there. We left a little mud going on there. Just kind of implies that they're worn out. And then we're going to use these tufts. Now I really like the way that they have. See how they're multiple shaped and sized. This gives it a really authentic look. A lot of other companies have their tufts and they're just kind of round. And they look like something you bought at the store, where this looks more natural. How it would look in nature. Grasses don't grow in a single round tuft. Well, don't get me wrong, sometimes they do. But for the most part, it's just kind of random. So I really like the way these look. And they get all different sizes. You got big ones, like this guy here I'm putting on. Or you got small ones. Really simple. Now, I was kind of reading the instructions in the back. It says I could probably just push this into the paste and leave it there. And the paste would hold it in place. But I always like adding white glue. And you can see I put excessive amounts on there. I want to make sure that tuft's not going anywhere. So I put a lot of extra on there. Yeah, sometimes I push it down. I got my little tweezers here and I push them in. But I spent more time on this part. Because I don't, usually I just skip the basing part. I just kind of say I did it and show you some of the products I used. But I really wanted to show you what these products look like and, how I actually apply them. Now, it doesn't matter if you got a little bit too much white glue. It dries clear. You're not going to see it. So it's perfectly fine. All right, so let's look at the table. We're getting closer and closer to getting that completed Blood&Crowns table. I really can't wait to paint all the miniatures up and 2 armies. Really, I'm kind of just focusing on English. So I'm going to have to do some more French. I'm going to maybe do some men-at-arms next or something, some foot soldiers. But I think these came out fantastic. I really like those metallic paints, the basing materials. Just another shout-out to Huge Miniatures for sending that out to the Plunder Den. I really appreciate it, and I really enjoyed using those products, and I'll continue using them in the future in all sorts of different projects. And then, of course, looking at their full assortment, Huge Miniatures has a wide range of products. All right, so we're going to get around that church again. Finally get an excuse to use a church again. And now that Firelock Games released a monk, I got a monk for it, and this is the extent of my Blood&Crown miniatures right now, but I assure you I'll have 2 full armies once we're done here. All right, that's it on this one. I hope you guys enjoyed this episode. Thanks so much for tuning in.